Good evening. It is Wednesday, July 26th, 7:34. We're going to say the pledge and go into our meeting. What happened? Oh, okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. So this is going to be work session.
Yes, Mayor, thank you.
Okay. Karen, I think if it's a work session, that would put you on.
Yes, I'm sorry. It was just,
We don't have, well, maybe I do have, you know what, let me just do this. There are a lot of events going on. It's hard to keep up with them. So the public should always be looking at the Village Web Blast that, while long, is highly informative. The one item I think that I recall seeing that might be a little different is that ENU is having an event on Saturday at the waterfront, and I'm stalling because I'm thinking it's 12 to 6, but I don't have the information in front of me. Jamie, what's the hours?
I have to look it up. Give me just a second.
It's during the day. And most of the day, and I was actually trying to look it up, but couldn't find it. We'll get back to you on that. I don't think there are any other announcements, so village manager, you're on.
good evening. Our first topic this evening is we have our consultants from Mitchell Associates, Bob Mitchell and Charles Jennings. It's Mitchell and Manitou. And they're here to present the Ossining Fire Department Firehouse Consolidation Report. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Bob and Charles so they can present.
You're on
Okay,
Zoom, right?
I'm Bob Mitchell. Can you hear me okay?
You're coming in just fine. Welcome.
Okay, thank you. So it's myself, Bob, and Charles Jennings and Ken Gale, and we have a PowerPoint, and I will start that now by sharing my screen. And bring this thing over. Okay. So I think, well, I presume you all know that we were retained to do a study relating to the fire station, and we were chosen in part because this is what we do. Mitchell Associates has done nearly 200 public safety projects addressing over 330 facilities, almost all of which are fire stations, and we're deeply immersed in it. I lecture nationally on the design of fire stations, and Ken, who's with us tonight, sits on two different NFPA committees, National Fire Protection Association committees, that address fire service, occupational safety, and health. Also with us tonight is Charles Jennings of Manitou, and Charles is a national leader. He's local. He's soon not to be local. He lives in Peekskill and he's moving down to Baltimore, but he's been up here for a long time, and his work is in fire operations, operational analysis, and response time mapping, and he'll talk more about that as we go. There were previously studies done for Ossining on this very subject, and we did them. This was a study we did in 2007 for a two-company station to be located on Hawks Avenue. That project didn't go through because of the developer of the property either failed to go forward or changed their opinion about what they wanted to have happen. And in 2009, we did a more global study about the needs assessment, response analysis, site and facilities analysis for the existing buildings and what should be. And Charles worked on that, did a comprehensive study of who the members were and what their interests and attitudes were about the evolution of the department towards the direction of some consolidation. And I'm sure he'd be happy to answer questions about that. He also developed response time mapping for the city. We worked together on a similar project in Peekskill that started about that time and resulted in the headquarters that's there now. We did analyses of the conditions of the buildings at that time, all of
If I
them,
could just
and
ask a question for, I'm sorry for interrupting. What is your preference for this? Do you want us to hold all questions to the end, make notes? Or do you want us to ask as you go along? And everybody has a different style. So what is more comfortable for you?
well, we were told to present in 15 minutes. So I think if we
Oh,
go
you were
through
given
it,
an extra 5 minutes. Okay. So you want to go through it and then a Q&A, right?
that would be preferred.
Great. Thank you so much. Sorry for.
You're welcome. So the conditions in 2009 were reported out as being very unsatisfactory. We did an analysis of what a station could be and what the parts and pieces would be. And we presented to the board what proper spaces in a fire station would look like as compared with what was there now. It resulted in recommendations for each of the stations. This is just an example. And it included looking at the Snowden Avenue site, which we again looked at in 2012, 13, and 16. Each time a developer of the property behind had some idea about what they wanted to do and how they could benefit from from being given land to cross. So in each case, it was nothing beneficial to the village, but the studies got done and consistently resulted in the determination that the site is a very poor site for a modern facility. So the current study attempts to revisit at least the approaches that were done back in the past, compiling data on the membership trends, inspecting the existing stations, and developing a design program and a concept building, that should say plan, not pan, and layout for a 3-company station to replace Snowden Avenue that would house engine 96, 99, and ladder 42. So that was done, and we also were to look at alternative sites for the Snowden Avenue people, and we met with the other departments, the other companies, Cataract, Engine 98, Engine 100 at Hallahose, and 101, and explored the possibilities with them of teaming up and sharing facilities, the result of which was to hold on that to demonstrate through the Snowden Avenue replacement what it could be and let them walk through what it is and have a better idea about what it would mean. So I'm going to ask Ken to talk about the existing conditions assessments, and Ken, just tell me when to advance the images.
Sure. Good evening, everyone. Excuse me. So as Bob had mentioned, we looked at all the stations back in 2009, and they were deemed quite unsatisfactory to modern standards. So what we proposed to do for this 2022 study, which is 2023 now, was to basically report on if conditions in all different aspects of the building got better, worse, or essentially remained the same. So we did it for all stations, all listed here: the steamer, monitor and hollow hoses, cataract hose, independent, north side, and headquarters. Now, go back a second, Bob, if you would. So what's important to note is what is called a Category 4 building. So there are 3 different groups of standards and codes that define what a Category 4 building should be. And it's generally the International Building Code, the NFPA, and ASCE, the American Society of Civil Engineers, minimum guidelines for buildings and other structures. Fire stations, police stations, and hospitals fall under Category 4, which basically, in light of a natural disaster, the building still remains functional and can still do its intended purpose. And just as a reference, office buildings would be a Category 2. Schools would be Category 3. So there's not many buildings that fall under Category 4. So all reports were based on current standards for a modern fire station. Okay. So we started with the steamer hose stations, the oldest of the stations, built in 1880, stone foundations, a lot of original woodwork in place. And the site's very steep, not conducive to good driveway access. There's no apron in the front of the building. The pictures below show we have desks in the apparatus bay. This is the hallway leading to the upper level out of the backside street, and the floors are in disrepair from a roof leak. And mechanical, electrical is probably circa 1950 to 1970. So generally, the station rated an overall poor rating. The next station was Monitor Hose. This was built in the 50s. We didn't have an exact date from the building department. Again, here we had not enough land. So per current standards, the site was in poor condition for navigating apparatus. You can see the picture in the lower left. There's no room to go down the aisles between the trucks and the walls. Center picture and the picture bottom right are showing water infiltration in different parts of the building. So again, architecturally it was poor. Structural was still average, although it would not hold up to modern day seismic requirements. And again, here we had old and dated mechanical, electrical. So again, this one reigned overall placed in a poor category. Next station was Hollow Hose, built in the 70s, 1977. The site was a little bit more roomy and comfortable. There was a rear section of the station. This is the one, if I remember correctly, looks out at Sing Sing. But at the rear of the station, the concrete wasn't cured right, or the rebar was too close to the edge of those lintels. And you can see in the center picture, those lintels are slowly deteriorating. The aisles are a little bit better than in some of the earlier stations. And you can see on the bottom right, they're doing an upgrade while I was there so they could bring in a roll-up generator in the event they lost power there. And that was a good electrical upgrade, but you'll see overall mechanical electric on the whole was still very dated for the whole facility. And this one averaged out to an average to poor. Cataract Hose, original building was built in the 50s. They did a small one-story addition in the 80s. There's not much site to it. Again, we have working station desks right behind the back of the apparatus. You can see the gear lockers in that center bottom picture as well as in the one on the far left. We just have a lot of NFPA violations in this and as in other stations as well. We have food services in the apparatus bay. We have turnout gear, which off gas, Bob, they off gas, PAHs.
Polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons.
Thank you, Bob. And again, we have very tight egress aisles, not just for first responder, but these don't even meet OSHA minimum requirements from like a mechanical room. It says you need 28 inches minimum egress. And for a fire exit, it's more like 44 inches. So again, here we averaged out as a poor. And next station was Independent, built in the 30s, 3 levels with 1 extra level below as the driveway loses elevation. While it had a good parking lot towards the rear of the facility, it ranged an average to a poor just because of the slopes out of the front of the apparatus bay. The aisles and navigation through the front of the apparatus is far less than standards, which is about 5 feet of clearance for first responders to run to, get their gear on, don their gear, and roll out to the fire. This one ran pretty much poor against all modern standards in every category. It got the average to poor for the site because there's a little bit of a parking area and a pavilion out back. So this one had more land space than any of the other stations. Next, we had Northside, which was a very stylish building built in the 1930s. Beautiful wood beams, but unfortunately, it's not what you want a fire station built out of these days. The site had parking in the rear, although the asphaltic surface was deteriorated and that needed full replacement. The architectural was average to poor, and it got the average in there because a lot of the original woodwork is still intact in the meeting rooms and such, but it's really not very helpful when you take a look at the tight conditions we have in the apparatus bays. There's no room to do work, and there's no room to prepare to respond to a call. And the picture on the bottom right was just one example of the aging electrical in the building. Next station was headquarters, the newest station, built in 2004. This had a lot more of the current standards being satisfied, but still had some issues, like we still have tight aisles. Unfortunately, it wasn't designed wide enough. Pictures in the center and bottom right, you can see there's leaking coming through the exterior wall, most likely up at the roof line. And all this and everything I've spoken of previously is all in detail in the full reports that will be uploaded to the village website. So we put together a summary here, and you'll see condition summary with the asterisk. For the sake of emphasizing the older stations that need replacement, it did not analyze the new fire headquarters in these totals. But of all the existing stations, they average out to 86 years old is the average age across all stations. Sites average to poor, not enough land, and most especially not enough frontage to get the apparatus fully out of the building and on the apron before it comes into the public way and the street. Architectural conditions poor because we have old facilities, and there's really only so much you can do without a full gut. And there's really no desire, we feel, to gut buildings of this age because of their size. Nothing we do to make the walls look better are going to make the apparatus have more room and for work and response conditions. Structural conditions came up to average to poor. None of those stations will meet current seismic codes, current roof loading codes for snow loads, current wind load requirements for essential facilities. Average mechanical electrical conditions, again, poor, mostly old electric devices, old electric wiring, and most of the mechanical equipment is at or near the end of its lifetime, with the exception of some boiler upgrades that have been going on through several of the stations.
So, Charles, would you discuss what you did?
Sure, Bob. You can hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So as Bob had pointed out, the scope of work for this study was very similar to what was done back in 2009. And so we began, and really the complement to the architectural work was kind of looking at how the fire department operates. Is it healthy? Does it still make sense? And what are the facility needs? And so that's really what we're trying to do, which is to complement the kind of the bricks and mortar with the people. And so we did interview the chief officers, the company captains, and actually company presidents. I think we interviewed all but one. And we had a member survey, and we assessed the feasibility of facility consolidation from a response time standpoint. So next slide. So owing to the distribution of stations that you have right now, by any conventional analysis, you've got a tremendous number of resources concentrated in the village center, right? What they call the downtown. And so there are potentials to gain efficiency by reducing that concentration, and you can move a few companies out of the downtown without having an impact on degrading response times. And so that's a beneficial position to be in. As was pointed out, those companies that are downtown tend to be in some of the oldest and most poor condition stations. And so when we look at response times for this study, I just want to emphasize that response time is a total of call processing, dispatch, turnout, and drive time. Call processing is calling 911 and relaying your information to the operator. Dispatch is the process of alerting the fire department over radio. Turnout is the time it takes for the members to get from wherever they happen to be when the alarm is activated onto the apparatus or the truck. And then drive time is that segment of time from driving out through the garage door, hopefully the door opens, and to the alarm. And so we only modeled the drive time, but that is appropriate because these other time segments essentially can be thought of as fixed. And so the one we have the most control over is the facility locations. Next slide. So in terms of the overall health of the department, it was kind of reassuring to run the numbers and see that for the most part, it was actually quite reassuring that the numbers of members attending alarms was very close to what we had in 2009, and the record keeping for the department, which was a real issue back in 2009. Has been markedly improved, and so the quality of records is much better, and the department was able to produce the data that we requested. The last time I literally had to go down and sit and go through paper records and tally them up on a legal pad. This time I went and sat with the chiefs and we had a nice chat for about an hour or two, and I walked out of there and I had probably 75% of all the data we needed, which was readily available through their computerized record system. Training has improved. That was an issue or a concern. I think part of it was a documentation of training. That is, a lot of training is done at the company level in the department, and that training was not getting documented, written down, and that has an impact on the insurance rating of the department. And that comes out in the report. And really, the last few years, the training has improved considerably in terms of number of hours and documentation, and that's not reflected in the rating that was done back in 2017. Next slide. Generally, the attitudes of the members were about the same, generally very positive. There were some issues, as there always are, but the kind of continuing pattern of a little skepticism among the membership about the village's commitment to build a new fire station. There were some members who kind of, when we talked about this, they put their hands across their, selves and said, "You did the study in 2009 and nothing happened. Why are you here now?" So we did address those, and we certainly, captured that. Notably, in terms of incentives for members, there was a strong feeling for adoption of a LOSAP or length of service awards program, and an increase of incentives. And I know that the village board did act on the incentives, the tax incentive, earlier this year, which is good. Next slide. So to summarize, the fire department continues to provide excellent value and quality service to the public. We had advocated before, and we believe that quarterly reports to the village and membership on key performance indicators would be very positive to keep the village elected officials, the members, and the public informed about the contributions of the members on an ongoing basis. Recruitment activity is still primarily done at the company level, and you can never do too much recruitment, and so there is need to take on a bigger role at the department level. Incorporate mobile data computers in each apparatus to simplify recording unit status. A little bit in the weeds, but that's a recommendation we had from 2009. And if you get into the report, you'll see that would improve the quality of some of the data we have. And then we certainly endorsed the idea of moving forward with citing a new consolidated fire station, and the member attitudes are much more receptive to that than they were in 2009. And so from our perspective, it is a kind of an unqualified green light to move forward on those fronts. And I think that's my section, Bob.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, because my camera's frozen. So, okay, so this is the kind of tool we used for determining the needs. It's called programming. We went through room by room all of the spaces that would be sensible to be used for the station. Now, this is a 3-company station that we're talking about to replace Snowden Avenue. And it resulted in a spreadsheet that sums up all of the rooms in the building. And if you look at the bottom right, in this iteration, it's 16,425 square feet. In an earlier pass through this, the number was much larger. It was close to 26,000. And there was a lot of soul searching and about the whole subject of what it is that's an individual space of an individual company versus the shared space in the departmental life. So there was a larger design associated with the 26,000 square feet. And then there was this kind of a reckoning around cost, because it was made clear that it had to be something that the village could afford to do. And this is a 3-company design, and we can provide copies of this for it to be studied, but there's 4 vehicles in there, and there's storage rooms. There's a decontamination laundry, which we'll talk about. There's storage room that's departmental, and there's storage rooms that are individual to the companies. And then each company has a room of their own to maintain their identity. This turned out to be a very important issue that across the board with every company that we talked with, that they have something they can call their own for the camaraderie of the company membership. So we did a conceptual site plan and came up with needing about 2 acres, with the belief that 84 parking spaces are what's the appropriate for 3 companies sharing a building. And that 84 could be a little bit fungible, but at this point, we're thinking it's about right. So I want to bring up something that's critical that was not addressed in 2009. I mean, the firefighters go into a horrendous set of gases when they go to a fire, and they're exposed to these individually, and they come back to the station with them. And when they come back to the station, there should be the ability to decontaminate. There isn't in any one of your stations. There isn't source capture to capture the fumes from the tailpipes of the fire trucks. All of what comes back as contamination and is generated by exhaust from the vehicle just travel around the building and settle wherever they settle. And this is something that should not be continuing to happen. Every building that we design, and the standard in the industry across the United States, is that the building is divided into a hot zone, a warm zone, and a cold zone. And the things that fall into what you would call as living and office type spaces are in the cold zone. And the contaminants are unable to move from hot to cold. And if you'll see here on the upper left of this image, there's a shower. The firefighters deserve to go home clean and not bring contamination to their family. And the only way that happens is if they have the ability to completely strip down, because these polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons are small, they pass through the turnout gear, they get to the skin, they get absorbed through the skin, through the fatty tissue, down to the lymphatic system and circulatory system, and then they are only removed to the extent that they're removed through the body's organs. And this leads to a cancer risk and needs to be addressed. So what are the next steps from our point of view? You have to select a site. You have to produce contract documents for the 3-company station. It has to be bid and built. So if you can select a site by October, you could bid the project in the spring of 24, and it could be completed by late summer of 25. You can't get there sooner than that. So you could get there a little sooner than that if, in the end of it, it involves renovating an adaptive reuse of some sort of building. And that is our presentation. So let me stop sharing, if I can figure it out. Okay. So I know there are questions, or I assume there are questions, so please ask. I guess my camera's gone dead, so you'll just have to imagine me.
Thank you.
You bet.
All right, now we're going to open up. First of all, thank you very much. It was, I don't remember if it was 80 pages, but we all got the more detailed version. I think it was about 80. So there are some questions, and I appreciate that I think the staff also participated in a lot of the work, and our attorney. So I don't think that the members of the board, Bob Fritchie may have been asked, but he probably is because he's also in the fire department. I don't think the rest of us were. So this is because all the stuff goes on the record, I just want to make that clear, that none of the board members were actually interviewed for the study. And I don't know if you interviewed anybody that was around then. I'm just trying to pick up some of the pieces just to complete. And Maddie, were you the one that mostly worked on this? Great. Maddie Sahaj, who's the assistant village manager. Not that others didn't, but it's all good. So let us start with, do you have some questions? Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. As the mayor stated, we sort of, I did read the report, the previous report. I'm going to start with some basic questions, and obviously I'm going to ask more on in the legal parts. Stuart, this is a question that I always ask. Make sure that CAD files and any documentation that is part of the study is actually collected for future use at some point in the future. So I want to make sure that is clear. But besides that, so you did a study in 2009, you now did a study in 2023. And as you stated, you pretty much have done this for many, many years. So you have a lot of basic about experience. So I do appreciate that. So comparison to other municipalities that you have worked, where do we stand in 2023 in comparison to other municipalities similar to what Austin looks like?
Well, first, let me say that according to the NFPA, almost 50% of the fire stations in the country are functionally obsolete. So that's something like 25,000 fire stations. So you're not alone. The lower Hudson Valley is filled with old fire stations. And so any of the communities like yours have similar problems. That they haven't been fixed is a shame, because cancer in the fire service is an epidemic. And these are people, they're your neighbors, they volunteer to try and protect your lives. and their lives should be protected as well.
Thank you. Totally understand that. Now, since 2009 to 2023, have you done a very similar study in other municipalities here in Westchester or New York area?
Yes, Peekskill is a good example. They consolidated 5 companies into that new building, and the existing buildings were dreadful. I mean, there was in one of them, the sleeping room was off the boiler room. And it just, and why does that happen? Because things don't keep up with, well, I don't know. You get the communities. It's difficult to answer that without sounding like
No, I understand.
scolding.
No, of course, and you have a very passionate, for the work that you do, and I respect that a lot. So, but in Peekskill, the firehouse in Peekskill, my recollection, has been sort of an concept for close to 10 years, more or less. Yes.
Yes, we started working on that, I think in 2008 or something like that.
How much was that firehouse? Do you remember?
I do. It was a bargain. It was $12 million, which sounds like a lot, but for what they got, maybe it was 13 million. For what they
No, you were
got,
right the first time.
it was a tremendous bargain. And and prices per square foot for construction have doubled since the time that was built.
Okay. No, but, I fortunately I agree with you.
Yeah.
Now, so one thing that is obviously the public is not, we haven't shared, at least in this presentation. So let's talk about the current situations that our firehouses have. As you stated, there's different issues with that, from structural to mechanical problems to site accessibility, building structural itself. If you wanted to put more or less a budget number to address the more critical items on those, what would that look like?
Are you talking about across the entire collection of buildings?
Just pick a building.
Well, we have come up with a budget number for the 3-company station to replace Snowden Avenue. And it's in the range of $15 million as a project cost, hard and soft costs. And that's based on $800 a square foot for construction, which sounds impossibly high, but it is unfortunately what it is. Now, Yonkers was that much back when we did Yonkers, but that was a very difficult site.
Yeah, and Yonkers is a city, obviously, and their budget is a total different budget from what the village of Austin has.
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to kind of compare, I don't want to say apples to apples, but municipalities that are close in range to what we have. If we can take, if you can give us example of maybe towns or villages, not cities, obviously, because Peekskill is a city, Yonkers is a city. So I just want to kind of keep it within a range of what we have.
Well, we have a project we're working on currently in Chappaqua, and it's an addition to their station, which the addition is approximately the size of the proposed station for Snowden replacement. And I think that budget is about $12 or $13 million. So,
How many?
And that's an addition, not a renovation to the existing building. So you could think of it as if it were a freestanding firehouse.
Sure. And how many firehouses does Chappaqua have?
The one.
Just one.
Yeah.
Okay. And how much the Chappaqua covers?
I'm sorry, you're asking about the square miles covered?
Yeah, pretty much. Do they cover other municipalities, or they just concentrate in Chappaqua?
Pretty much just Chappaqua. I'm not, I don't know the square mileage covered.
No, you don't. That's okay. Okay, so if I wanted to put a number to the headquarters is the better one. Independence. How much do you think it will cost the village to bring to the standards require for that particular firehouse?
I don't think that those buildings can be brought up to standards. The reason is the apparatus bays are too small for modern fire trucks. You know, one of the things, you don't have ceiling heights that make it plausible to have suspended hose connected tailpipe fume exhaust. Now that's, you know, NFPA says this is something you need to do. Yeah, that's one. Two, OSHA has a requirement to provide a safe workplace. I forget what it's called, the due diligence clause or some phrase like that. And it means having enough space around the truck that you can't possibly be harmed by being adjacent to the truck at the time the truck starts moving. And these, you know, other than hollow hose, none of them have floor space around adequate to give that assurance. So
If we were to, and I'm sorry, so if we
Okay.
were to build this new firehouse, out of the 7 firehouses that you did the study, sure, headquarters is the one that is okay for now, obviously, sure, for the current
Yes,
standards.
yeah.
So we'll be moving 3 different firehouses to this new location.
Yep.
2, sorry, thank you. 2 firehouses to the proposed new location.
No,
What-
actually three companies in this one building
Yeah.
we're talking about.
That's what, sorry.
You meant to say
Companies. Sorry, yeah, 2 houses.
Yeah.
Thank you. So
That's
what
okay.
happens to the other ones that stay in the buildings that are not to standards? And the way you said, there's no way that we can meet any standards at that point. So what happens to those buildings where we still keep our firefighters and our trucks to a non-standard facility?
I think you have to do a best effort to provide some level of care and protection in those buildings. I don't think you can, you know, it's not for me to say you ought to build 3 new stations, you know, 1 with 3 companies and 2 with 2 companies each. I mean, that would be the only way to assure that everybody was in a fully modern, proper facility. I think temporary measures could be implemented in the other stations.
Now,
And we've done that kind of study before. Ken has done studies where a bunch of different tasks are identified as must be done now. This thing will hold you for 5 years. That thing's work, you know, can work for 10 years. And we can throw dollar values at them that, you know, it's sort of spitball numbers, but it gives you a feel for it. And it will be less than the cost of replacing all the buildings now. However, over time, the prices, I mentioned that the prices doubled since the time that Peekskill was built. You know, kicking the can down the road is a very expensive thing with the rate of inflation of construction. Inflation of construction far outstrips general inflation.
I think we're done. I think we understand that. We
Yeah.
have dealt with other projects that unfortunately I don't want to say have doubled the price, but definitely have increased the price of that. But in 2009, more or less when the study was completed, let's say 2010, 2011, if that project would have been completed at that time, how much do you, more or less, you estimate that cost to be more or less of what Peekskill was?
No, I think at that time, boy, I'm digging into a memory. I can't guarantee that I got this right.
I won't hold you to it.
So I think that we were thinking it was about $350 a square foot, $300 a square foot at that
Would have been
point.
about $5 million, more or less than that.
Well, yeah, 1.5, yeah, 5 or 6 million. I mean, as a reference point, in the year 2000, we were doing fire stations at $100 a square foot.
Okay,
3 times.
you know, more, yeah.
It's gonna be even more than that.
Yeah, more than that. Now, for now, I'm gonna ask you my last question for now, at least.
Sure.
In your experience and what you have seen and what's going on in New York State and everything else, is there a possibility that we could apply it, or is there some sort of grant that we can get if the board decides to move forward with this at some point? Is there an opportunity for us to get grants for a project like this?
I don't think so, other than small grants to cover things like a breathing air compressor or turnout gear or air bottles. I haven't seen, well, we have a client in town of Cortland, south of Syracuse, that's got a member item for 2.4 million. But that's the first thing like that we've seen since there were some reconstructive things after Hurricane Irene.
Were you involved in the one in Millwood, the firehouse in Millwood?
We were not.
But I'm sure you're familiar with that.
We certainly are. Yeah, because we're working in the adjacent community in Chappaqua.
How many parking spaces does that site more or less have?
I have no idea.
Is it more than 84? Does it look like more than 84 or close by 84 parking?
You know, I've driven in and looked at it. I've never paid attention to that question.
Just curious, because that's the newest one that I'm sort of, I always drive by. That's why.
Yeah. Well, and you know, it would be possible to find out what it cost in the year that it was done and then escalate it forward on some sort of negotiatedly agreed upon rate of inflation for construction and see what that would be today. I mean, we try to do that all the time because we know the as-built cost of dozens and dozens of fire stations going all the way back to 2000. And the question always is, what does any one of those tell us about what something is going to cost next year?
Right. Thank you. I don't have any questions right now, but thank you.
You're very welcome.
Anybody else have questions? Dana, we'll get to you after Omar.
Thank you for the presentation. So first, I want to start with an image that you showed of the potential consolidation site that had the 3 companies and all of the apparatuses and all of that. It seemed to me from my extremely untrained eye that when I'm just looking at it, that it also has pretty tight spaces between the apparatus and the bay, so that it didn't seem like there was as much space as you were saying that potentially we would need in a new firehouse. Can you expand on that?
Oh, certainly. So our standard is that between 2 parked pieces of apparatus, you have 8 foot clear between them. You have 5 foot clear between the front bumper and the door. And then on the end truck where the truck then, it's not another truck next to it, but it's a wall, but maybe with doors in it. We like to be at 6'8" or 7'4", and then behind it, a minimum of 5 feet. So that is what those are, and it's been I could show you photographs of some of those kind of spaces. They're quite generous. The side panel doors or on the truck can be open and you can still go between. Now, we take it very seriously. We had a client that had previously had a fatality in the bay. It was a trip hazard, and the person ended up under the truck and the driver didn't know. Now, part of our commitment is, captured in this phrase that I use all the time: there's nothing on the floor but tires and feet. No trip hazards, a very serious process of determining what the coefficient of friction of the floor should be, and things like that. So, that's a little bit of a departure from your question about the lineal feet around the truck, but I just wanted you to know that the space being safe is something we've thought about for decades and pay attention to.
Thank you.
You bet.
Next, on the slide that showed what the next steps would be, I failed to see community engagement specifically around the site that the new consolidated fire station would be. And can you say a little bit more about what that would look like?
Sure, sure. It was an oversight not to have it on the slide. I apologize. You know, the project, uh, every community that we work in has had, well, almost everyone, let's say 90% of them, have had to go through the process of getting public buy-in and, you know, to approve a bond referendum or something like that. And there is a very definable relationship between the level of effort in reaching out to the community and explaining the project and the positive outcome of public support. One in particular, I won't name, they didn't want to go out to the community. If the community wanted to know, the community should come in here, and they got voted down. One of the community members ran to be on the board of the fire district, and once on the board, they had me come down and present the information, and then that person said, oh, if I had known that, I never would have been opposed. So it was a mistake on the part of this was a fire district of the commissioners. It was a mistake not to go out and tell everybody. And then years later, they brought it back around again, and they had learned that lesson, and they went out. They were supported with a fairly strong margin. And you know, it may sound like I'm describing a goal of just getting it approved, but that's not really what I'm trying to say. I mean, that is certainly part of it, because if it doesn't get approved, why bother having gone through all this? But the community ought to know the importance of this. They should have understanding and sympathy for the people who are fighting these fires.
Got it. Thank you. So yes, I would definitely encourage that be included moving forward so that folks know that we're going to be engaging with them. The image that you had that showed what the new space would look like, particularly the warm, cold, and hot zones that showed kind of the flow from the decontamination through the showers. I failed to see more than just, it looked to me like there was one room for showers. We have both male and female firefighters. Can you tell me how that works?
Sure. Each of the four, in that instance, there's 4 showering chambers. Each one of them has a door. So you go in, it's unisex. You close the door. This is similar to what you would see in a Gold's Gym or something like that. You go into this, you come through the door, and you're in a dry space with a bench and a place to hang things up, and you can strip down. Then you go from there into the shower stall, and then you come back out. Now, on the way there, you pass a series of lockers, and you have your own locker. And what's in your locker is a clean set of clothing that you can use to go home. When you have stripped down and showered and redressed, you take everything you were wearing and you bring it back into the space that has the laundering equipment, and it gets laundered in a high temperature steam cycle, which is something that's not allowed for the turnout gear because it undermines its fire protective capability, but it's, we think, essential for underwear, for instance, because this stuff gets in there. And the genital area has the thinnest skin on your body and has the highest rate of absorption of these carcinogens. In fact, testicular cancer in firefighters is twice the national average.
Thank you. So I'm not sure where to direct this question, but what is the objective of tonight?
Well,
You, Deputy Mayor.
That's for the staff.
Sorry, didn't mean to cut you off, Mr. Mitchell.
No, I want you to answer it.
So just to give a little bit of context to this whole conversation, back in 2021, under the consolidated funding application, we had actually applied for a grant to update this study. This is something that was highlighted in the comprehensive plan update, asking tomorrow that, we get some more information on here. So we applied and were granted a grant from the Department of State to do this consolidation study. It's not a terribly large grant, but this was just to get us started. We've been working very close with the Department of State as we've gone through this process. So they're well aware of, every step that we've taken and where we're looking to go. Unfortunately, we, besides the fact that we have no site, which would be helpful, we've also missed or will shortly miss the cutoff for this year's CFA applications. But the next step would be, if it's the board's option to move forward, is that we could apply to Department of State now for implementation money under the same program. Probably not going to be, again, a huge amount of money, maybe $2 million max, but that would help to sort of defray the cost of if the board did mean to go forward and actually design and construct the station. So I think at this point, Mr. Mitchell and Mr. Jennings and Mr. Gale are sort of bringing forth what they've learned. So now we're closing out this section of the study. Certainly, I think as Mr. Mitchell mentioned, they could offer recommendations for some short-term solutions while we sort of get our ducks in a row and start thinking about this a little bit, more globally. But next steps would be, again, if the board would like to start looking at sites that might be amenable to, a new 3-company firehouse.
Got it. Thank you. So I will say first, generally speaking, this is something that I think is important and makes sense. And I'm certainly in favor of wanting to find a path for us to do this. I think it's important. Second, I am still very unclear around the economics of all of this, because we have some real estate where the existing firehouses are, those would go back on the tax rolls. How does that offset maybe the construction, or, I don't know. So that doesn't all quite make sense to me yet, but I'll call upon Dale, and Dale will bless us with numbers. And so at some point, I think that will be clear. The last thing, though, is that I'm also unclear, and this is maybe where my friends on Zoom can expand on what the range of options are here in terms of the ultimate consolidated firehouse on Q. Are we talking about what you presented? That's the minimum standard that you would recommend? Is that the Cadillac plan? Are there things in the middle? And so that we have a sense of, hey, if you're looking to do it once and do it right, spend the 15 mil, and that's going to get you everything you need for the next 20 years. Or if you spend 3 million more, then that's going to get you the, for example, not the battery, but the, what's the thing? The light goes out, and they were putting it in when the generator. Oh, we need a generator. Yeah, we need a generator. Oh, okay. So it's like, but if you spend the 18 instead of 15, you get the generator, you get to this, that, whatever. I would like to know all of that, because it's one thing to set it up once, and then another thing to constantly retrofit, particularly if we can anticipate on the front end what some of those expenses may be. So if you could expand on that, on what the range of options may look like, low end, minimum, high end, that would also be helpful.
Sure. Well, first thing I want to say is it's our belief that we have a responsibility to the next generations to see a building that has essentially an unlimited life. These are not throwaway buildings, and they have to be technically, technologically, and spatially capable of being useful for 100 years or more. Now, those things, what does that translate into? Robust materials, good detailing, a reasonable sized door and space between trucks, things like that. In terms of what, this thing that we're talking about comes with the generator. It comes with all the life safety obligations that all of the standards of NFPA and OSHA and ASTM and everybody call for. The question that one might ask is, what about space? Well, over the life of the building, one could argue volunteerism will go away, because that seems to be a trend in America, not in Austining, but in America, and not just in the fire service, but everywhere. So the members' rooms provide enough area that any future iteration of either a blended volunteer and career group or an all-career department will be able to fit in the building. So there's decon laundry. The only function that's not in the building is the breathing air, bottle filling, which resides at headquarters. And that's okay. They can drive down the road to headquarters to refill the bottles after they've been to a fire. So I think that it's not a question of, is this the crummy one or the good one? This is the adequate one. The larger design that was discussed by the representatives of the companies, at the start of the programming, was about amenities, not about functional obligations. So I don't know if that answers all of what you had in mind with your question.
It doesn't, but I'll be more specific. So
Sure.
understanding that what you're saying is the version that you showed meets all the minimum standards. I don't quite understand the 100-year. It seems to me like the technology is always changing and improving and so forth. And so just like when they built these firehouses, it was to spec for what it looked like then. We're building it to spec for what apparatuses and all that look like now. It stands to reason that in 100 years it will look different. And so, but that's not, I don't think it really matters. The larger question though is, you mentioned, for example, amenities. What about social spaces, bar spaces? Like some of the independent has room up above or just a space that you could rent or whatever. Those kinds of things that are not, it's not to spec, it's not like the minimum thing that you need for a firehouse, but what some of the members say, hey, we're going to have a new thing. We would like to have this. It would increase the attendance. It would make people be more likely to come and stay and that kind of thing. And so I don't think that's included in the 15, and I would just like more information about what that would look like and how much more it would increase the price tag.
Well, each of the three companies has 1,000 square foot room. And the only thing, and it could be configured with demountable walls, foldable walls between them, so you could end up with a 3,000 square foot space, but I don't think that that's anything that they desire. Somebody might in the future. The thing that they had no interest in, that many people do, is an exercise room of some sort. And that could be something that is an attraction for younger potential members in the department. So back to your other point though about changing technology, the doors and the space around the truck is always the thing that kills the old station above and beyond anything else, because the modern trucks are bigger. And it was a big surge in modern trucks when OSHA said that firefighters couldn't hang off the back of the truck. They had to be inside a cab. The cab area had to be big enough for them to be in them with their turnout gear and their air bottles and all that stuff. And then the air quality regulations required catalytic converters and all that stuff, which raised the floor of the truck and raised the height of it. The other thing related to that was the evolution of other equipment like jaws of life and things like that required building storage compartments into the sides of the trucks. Those trucks can't become a lot bigger because then they won't fit under all of the infrastructure, highway infrastructure, road widths. Right now, you get past 10 feet wide, you need an escort. You get more than 13 feet high, and there's an awful lot of bridges that they can't get under. So our doors are 14 feet high and 13 foot 4 inches wide. You know, never say never, but I don't see the possibility of trucks evolving in the kind of established infrastructure we live in that are going to exceed that. Think of the really old communities, like go to Europe. I mean, the things that are tighter because they maintain the existing proportions of space in the communities. So I don't think that will be a problem. And of course, I could be wrong. You know, my crystal ball is just my crystal ball.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Dana, questions? You're on mute. You're on mute.
So, hello, gentlemen. Thank you for
Hey,
this.
hello.
I agree with you that we need to think about the health of the firefighters. Very important, especially when you're asking them to volunteer. But it seems to me that you're looking at taking 3 downtown houses and putting them in one building, but why don't you just go for 4 houses? Why don't you put Northside in there? Because you've got a building that cannot accommodate modern trucks. There's no way to bring Northside up to snuff, you know? I mean, why stop at 3? I mean, we have, even if we build a new building for several companies, we then have to also invest money in the buildings that we're keeping that are older, that still need significant work. So it's a conundrum. I was looking at the fire apparatus complement and location chart. And I'm going to be the first one to tell you that I am not an expert on the fire department. One of our trustees is, and he's probably just champing at the bit to speak. And he can probably help answer some of my questions for me. But we have, in terms of apparatus, 6 pumper trucks. And they all happen to be located at the facilities we're looking to, or the buildings we're looking to shut down. And then we have 2 aerial trucks and a rescue truck. My question is, do we need 6 pumper trucks? I don't know, you know, I mean, are we efficient? Are we efficient in terms of our apparatus and our buildings and everything? I think there are some hard questions to ask here from where I stand, and I have great respect for our fire department. But I'm trying to figure out how we're going to build, how we're going to bring it up to snuff. I don't like having buildings that are rated poor. You know, we have a great fire department. These guys are great, and these women, you know, they deserve facilities that are top notch, right? They do. And they deserve to be safe, and they deserve to have facilities where they can clean themselves off and you know, not pay a price 30 years down the road for the service that they rendered for us today. So aside from the fact that we don't know where this new building would go, and I don't know why it couldn't go maybe in the town, does it have to go in the village? I know that the Hawks Avenue firehouse didn't turn out, and that was the town. But there's just only so many places in the village where something like this could go. And, you know, it's, you know, we don't have a lot of extra space.
Bob, can I take a swing at that?
Yeah.
Please do, Charles.
So look, you know, you point there, these are all legitimate and perfectly, you know, perfect questions to ask. But the reality is, and you're hitting on it yourself, is that, you know, the finding sites that will accommodate larger and larger facilities is a challenge. At the same time, as you do that, as to the degree that you're moving those facilities together, there's potential bigger impacts on the ability to provide response coverage, not necessarily at a high level, but certainly at a local level where a firehouse may get moved from where it is. And then just to the kind of, I guess, threshold question of, do we have too much apparatus? I think the way to answer that is that the fire department in Ossining, which is a venerable and ancient institution, is very vibrant, very vigorous. They provide a high level of service, and that service is based on the company model, where members have a very strong allegiance and alliance to the particular fire company, and those companies in totality comprise the fire department. And so that's an organizational model that goes back to the origins of the fire department, and they're certainly one of the more vibrant ones in Westchester, and probably across the state. And so could you do it with less apparatus? Yes. Could you, do you have to have every single truck you have now? Probably you don't. But how do you say, well, this company is going to disappear and expect that that's not going to cause tremendous turmoil and disrupt the patterns of participation that have sustained this organization and kept it running, more or less smoothly and very healthily, for well over 100, 200 years in some cases. So that's a decision that you have to be very cautious in even broaching it, because the trade-off you have between, and Bob talked about in the in the long run, the potential that potentially career staff would be used. Career staff are very expensive, and career staff do have the impact of, for better or worse, generally discouraging volunteers. And that's a cycle that I would not, push any community toward getting into. So, I think the frame of mind I would take in looking at your services, and again, if you look at the expenditures that the village makes on fire services, which we did back in the 2009 study, your per capita costs were quite favorable when compared to other fire services within the county, and you were getting a much bigger bang for the buck than many of your neighbors. And so I would be very cautious about chasing, the efficiency of, let's save, $600,000 on a capital cost one time, and then what are the downstream impacts in terms of doing that. So if there were going to be any kind of a streamlining, I really, my best advice for the village would be that that's got to be coming from the fire department. And there certainly doesn't seem to be any appetite for that now, nor do I see any companies that exist now that I would not consider to be viable and worthy of doing their job and continuing into the future. That's a long answer, but I just wanted to.
I know
make
it
sure.
sounded like I was suggesting streamlining, but I was just asking a question. I'm not suggesting that because I
Okay.
know that would be, I understand that's.
So Dana, it was a legitimate question. It's a very important question, and it, and so it prompted Charles to give the answer he gave. But I have to say, we deal in other communities where the volunteer department has disintegrated. There's one community, we started working with them in 2006. They had 3 paid drivers and 60 or more, 70 volunteers. They're down to, they don't have any volunteers, an all paid department. And one of the driving factors was the inability of the community to get it together and provide the facility that the volunteers had been asking for. And there had been study after study. And finally, I was at a meeting, and some of the volunteers said, "You're going to do another study? Well, we're out of here. Goodbye." So,
No, I mean, I'm not a fan of endless studies either. None of us are. And I would love to see us find a way to build a new firehouse. You know, then you're gonna have a really, really great firehouse, you know, and then you're gonna have a few others that really need some serious upgrading.
I know. That's
You
gonna
know.
be tough.
And everybody's gonna want to be in the really nice fire.
Well, that's right. That's right.
You
And by the
know,
way, the new station that we're talking about would replace Northside and add one other company to it. So the two companies from Northside and the third one whose name I can't, I'm not good at
Monitor.
that stuff.
Monitor host.
Monitor.
and there is Steamer's also downtown and Cataract is also downtown. You know, we have a cluster of, you know, as you know, firehouses all right down together. But
Dana, do you have any other questions?
no,
Okay. I'm looking at the time. So I actually heard her question very differently. So for a layman's, a resident, a person who doesn't specialize in this, or even for those of us who know a little bit more than we did before we sort of sat in these seats, I heard her question very differently. And I thought it was very straightforward, actually. What is the right number? Right? There is no such thing as endless, and there is no such thing as infinite, and there's no such thing as, you know, no relative stance of thing. If half of the firehouses in the state of New York or in the country are rated poor, we're either in the bottom 50% or in top 50%. Either way, we're like everybody else.
Yeah.
And I assume you were doing comparison volunteers to volunteers. You know, I don't know if being at the top 50 or bottom 50 is so bad or so good, because it's sort of like you're in the middle of the middle of the middle. We have a great history, but I thought the question from actually both deputy mayor and the trustee was more about when you have 27,000 people and you're on 3.2 square miles and you have a certain number that you have to reach in order to address how quickly you get to a fire. You know, places like Barcliff, and I looked up Chappaqua, by the way, you know, so they've got, I don't know, like 4,000 people or something. It's mostly single family homes, blah, 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 on more square miles than we have. So they don't have these high rises and all that we've started to build in the past decade. So it's hard to do an apples to apples. So we're trying to get like, what's the right number, right? Like, it's not, like we have the same issue with police. Like, what is the cost of a human life? Well, some people would say infinite. Insurance people will tell you, I could tell you the exact cost of a human life, right? They take the other extreme. We're just trying, and I think that is what she was trying to do, and I think that Deputy Mayor was trying to do, is based on your experiences, what's the right number of companies, and what's the right number of firefighters, and what's the right number of drivers, and what's the right number of trucks, and what's the right number of whatever in relation to the size, not of buildings, of our community. And the matrix gets complicated because if you have firehouses in one location, like in downtown, you know, but nobody uptown, not good, or nobody in the north and nobody in the south. So you can't put everybody in the southern part of a community, because how are they going to get to the northern part? And we also support the town. And we've actually asked that question a number of different ways, a number of times, and we sort of never get, I was hoping consultants who do this would actually be able to say, for 30,000 people or 27,000, you know, 49% live in apartment buildings, no more than 6 stories high, and half the community is single family homes. If you take in the towns, I mean, I could do these numbers off the top of my head. I think it would be interesting for people who have to make give suggestions or logically look at solutions, right? To say, for this many people in a community like this many people, you need X number of trucks and Y number of people with, you know, this many companies and this many buildings. That would be helpful to make a decision. What I learned today and what I learned in the study, which, you know, it's tough. First of all, I would take your 15 million bucks and put that right into 20 million before I even left here today. That number is probably realistic when you started this project. I mean, we have had one project after another after another. The trucks have doubled in price from 5 years ago, right? 600 to 1.3 now. Okay. I'm sure the uniforms will change. I'm sure this will change and that'll change. So, and that doesn't include if we have to buy a place. That 15 million that you quoted doesn't even speak to what if we have to buy this place. what I want to learn. So that's something we were hoping for, you know. It's like right sizing something. Does that mean that if you say you only need 5 buildings and a third of the people that you have, that a board would say, okay, then that's what we'll do? I don't think so, because we go back to your point. This is about not only the lives of the volunteers, of which are fewer and fewer, as you correctly stated, it's the lives also of the people who live in this community, right? Like my neighbors and my family. You know, we understand that. It doesn't have to be, we don't need to be hit over the head with that information. It's the lives of the volunteers, it's the lives of the people who visit here, the businesses, and the lives of our neighbors and our families. So we're not looking for the right number based on the heart. We're looking at the right number based on statistical knowledge of what's the right thing. Like, I know that we need different equipment. If we allow higher and higher buildings to be built here, as Peekskill is doing, their challenge, of course, is that they now need trucks that are different than what they needed 5 or 6, not for any other reason than the housing that they're approving. So there are a lot of variables. Our job is to look at the variables and ask these kind of questions. So I don't recall in the 80 pages that it ever discussed what I would call an ideal right sizing. I'm not sure it exists, frankly. Not asking for what is the value of a human life or a volunteer, simply asking as a municipality, what feels like the right thing. I already learned that we're not distributed correctly from the study. So even if you have the right number, they have to be spread out correctly. So that I think would be helpful. Did I miss it in the study, or was that not addressed?
Charles, that's for you. You're muted,
Unmute,
Charles.
Well, there was not in the scope to provide a minimum number of personnel and equipment to provide coverage to the service area. I think if you look at the mapping in terms of insurance industry standards, and those are not requirements, but they're standards, it's probably 3 or 4 firehouses would be sufficient to cover the entire territory. And then in terms of the number of companies, there could be some reduction in terms of apparatus. But again, that is one dimension of the issue, because you've got volunteer operation that's providing service now. And so you don't, it's not like if it was a career department, it would be very simple, right? You just say, okay, well, we're going to close a station, or we're going to move it, or we're going to disband a company.
It's
not the same.
It was a straightforward question. I don't think it's in the study. I didn't misread it. You keep hearing me and Trustee White as if we're asking to how to cut things and how to streamline. Actually, nowhere in my question was that actually asked. I'm just asking whether I missed in your study the right size, not the minimum size. As I said, like, all of us live here, and if there's a fire in our neighborhood, in our house, we want the best and the fastest. So I'm not looking for solution to downsize or cut. I'm looking to a simple question of, is there a right size for community? We know all the dimensions of our community. And I don't think that may not have been, Maddie, maybe in the scope of this study. So that's cool. I mean, I think that's all I was looking for.
I could just,
Well,
I didn't miss it.
I could just make a
that-
point of clarity. When you refer to prices of trucks and them doubling, you're comparing apples and oranges. One's a pumper, one's a ladder truck. So there is going to be a difference in price.
Okay, but all the prices have, not just in trucks.
I'm not saying it didn't increase,
Everything.
but you're saying it doubled. You're comparing 2 different trucks.
Okay, but I think the 15 million is underestimating, and I think that's real based on the water plant, on the community center, on all the DRI projects. I mean, it's realistic to say that things have gone up, and I wanted to be clear when we have to bond for things and look for things. So that's something that we might want to just look at. I don't, to have a sense of where we want to land. The other thing that I was missing for me, and I didn't see it in the presentation, was there any thought to taking down a current structure, since they all seem to be not repairable and not doable? Is there a place where we can take one down and build this model that you're looking at, if we can't find space for it? Is there any of the firehouses where we could do that?
Well,
Are there? Did I say is,
we
are
we
there?
didn't make an analysis of that, but just, from a windshield survey point of view, the lots are kind of small.
Yeah.
That site
You think it
plan,
needs 2.5 acres or 2? I wrote 2.5, but I'm not sure I heard you right.
well, that site plan was 2 acres plus something. I can't remember exactly. I could-
Okay,
I- I
maybe
could-
that's why I put 2.5 acres, because you said plus something. Okay, so we don't have any existing 2+ acres that we could take something down and build a beautiful new model that you're looking at.
Right.
Or you didn't look at that, but you're assuming. this,
Well,
is that correct?
it turns out, I've just flipped to that slide. It's 2 acres plus or minus. is the
Okay,
phrase.
all right. I wrote it down wrong, sorry. 2 acres. Do we have an existing 2-acre lot
I don't think
where
so.
we have anything? Okay.
Mr. Mitchell and Mayor, if I could, I think, and perhaps I know the chiefs are here and I know our village manager was involved and trustee Fritchie. When this conversation first began, I think it was at first contemplated that the north side station, the building itself would be
Right.
taken down and built on that site. And as Mr. Mitchell said, anything is engineerable. That's not completely off the table, but you're talking about a very steep slope back there and
Yeah, I
perhaps a
know.
doubling in price. So that was really the only property that was considered. And I think at the beginning, everybody had sort of hoped that was going to work because it would have been ideal.
Doesn't sound like it
But
will.
it's it could fit, but it's not going to fit.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So it was looked at. Okay. So that's the answer. Okay. Thanks, Maddie. So the rest of the questions I think were already asked. It's hard to sit here and hear that all the firehouses are in poor condition. I don't know what's worse, that most of New York State is just like we are, or that we're where we are. So I think that most of it, I think, is a great job of understanding what it is. The dollars, I think, in the past couple of years, probably even since you started, are just higher. They're higher for everything. Peak skill, just because somebody will look at this in a recording, peak skill is actually both career and volunteer. I think it's like a hybrid.
That's correct.
Correct?
That is correct.
And I think the mayor not that long ago hired a ex-career person to be the chief, rather than the volunteers running it. So they really are in size and population, location, but it's you would think it would be easy to find apples to apples in municipalities in the same county, but
Right.
somehow it's not that easy actually to find that. So I know we discussed it, and I just want, if anybody's watching this, to know that then it's not really the same thing. And I'm not making a judgment whether the right thing was done, the wrong thing. I know there was some cost savings, but I'm not suggesting, but you did bring up the point that your prediction of the future is that you believe that there will eventually fire departments, whether it's across the country or New York State, will be mostly career and fewer volunteer organization. Did I hear that correctly?
You did.
Yeah, and I'm thinking you're thinking a 50-year window, or you're thinking before then?
Depends on the community.
Okay.
I mean,
But-
the thing about Ossining is it's an anomaly. I tell people about the enormous size of your volunteer department,
Yeah.
and they all are astonished because nobody sees that anywhere.
Well, it's, I think, compliment to all the people who have been running the fire departments, all the volunteers and the chiefs. I have the same experience. Every time I go, Karen and I laugh, the village manager, we go to NICOM, and it all comes, every topic, it doesn't even matter. And I've said this publicly, it comes down to fire departments and how they're closing up and there are no volunteers. That is why we're trying to figure out how to get our arms around this. This isn't a cost-saving exercise. We didn't hire consultants for cost-saving exercise. This is how to build the right things in the right place at the right time and estimating the dollars. So we're not sitting here, and that we don't shackle the arms of future board members who are going to be stuck with a huge bill that wasn't predicted at a meeting like today's. That's why it's important to get the numbers right, because you want to make decisions that are realistic, because in my lifetime, prices never seem to go down about anything. So we have to be conservative, but and plus we learned even more so. So that's why we're trying to ask these questions today. I think that we've asked all the questions. I appreciate the time, gentlemen. Now that you've heard, I could have had you on first, but I thought it'd be more respectful with your experience and all that, that you first hear some of the questions we had, the comments by the consultants, if anybody else sitting around here has comments, I don't know, anybody? Okay.
Can I offer another thought?
Oh,
here,
you have
Crystal?
another thought. I'm sorry. I can't see who's speaking. I'm sorry.
This is Bob Mitchell.
Oh, there you
So-
go. Okay.
So I don't want you to think that we think you're trying to nickel and dime or anything like that. It was nothing that we ever thought here. The attempt was to come up with something that was, to use a stupid phrase, right-sized for the need. And there was nothing ever said to us about cutting corners or anything
Good.
like that.
Great. I appreciate that.
Sure,
Thank you for clarifying.
you bet.
Gentlemen, microphone is on. You don't have to, but I know you've been sitting here. If anybody, I just need you on the microphone so people on Zoom and recorded. Thoughts, comments? Did we not ask something? Okay. All right. No, I mean, it just, you've heard the whole thing. You've seen the study, you've been involved in the study, which we thank you. That's why I leave the best for last, not have you come up first. Okay. All right. Well, if you think of others, you know where we live.
Great.
Do not take that literally. You know.
Might I make a comment just quickly? I don't know
course
if
you
the
might.
team has any other.
Of course.
So this was a project that, because I, was helping writing the grant application, that kind of became a project that I worked on closely. And I just want to say, thank you to our chiefs and to our department. As a lifelong resident who knew absolutely nothing about what you guys did except for reading the 2009 study. It is a huge effort to do what our volunteers do, and I feel incredibly lucky. So I want to thank former Chief Gallery, and then of course our chiefs that we have here tonight. It's really been an honor, and I appreciate getting to know you and look forward to working together on the next thing. Yep.
Also, you could pass that on, although this will be recorded. It's really years we're hearing from consultants. I hear it when I go to the New York Conference of Mayors. It's the long part of our history in the fire department going back 20, 30 years. So it's these guys, but to your point, it's everybody else. So because it's cumulative, right? So appreciate that. Are there any further? I know it's getting late, but this is a topic. This is a big topic. This is not something we talk about often, but it's a big topic. Are there comments? Anybody? Everybody's good? Okay, so next steps, Ms. Sahaj, is what?
I think that the next steps are going to be for the board to consider, two parallel paths, right? One about short-term interventions that perhaps Mr. Mitchell and co can help us to sort of scope out. And then the second and more prominent path is to decide if this is something that we want to continue to explore. And if so, start identifying some parcels in the northern section of the village that we need the coverage area that might be plausible.
The only question I did have that wasn't answered, I don't know who's got the answer, that I want to make sure we hit is why, Dana might have asked this, why does it have to be in the village and not in the town? There must be.
It can be in the town, and we actually, the Stormy Town Road site is in the town of Ossining.
Right.
So it can be in the town, and it may even be preferable to be in the town because the reach needs to be for
That's
the
what we're
town.
going for, is the support.
So
for the
it's
town.
not limited to the village,
Okay.
but it would be limited to the north end of the village
Got it.
and or the town.
Got it.
Correct, guys?
Right.
Okay.
Okay, great. So maybe it was answered and I missed it. Apologies. Okay, so thank you. Thank you for working on this, and everybody else. I'm sure everybody hasn't been involved, Stuart and Karen and everybody else. So appreciate it. Thank you. You know how to reach us if there's anything you forgot that we need to know, et cetera, et cetera. And thank you, as Maddie had said so eloquently, for all of the advice and the help. And I think we are ready to move on. Thank you, guys.
Well, thank you for letting us participate in this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, and that's right. And I do want to thank you. I think we are done with this part. You're welcome to stay for the remainder of the meeting. Most people don't, but I always do offer that up. But I
Thank
do
you.
appreciate your time and the effort. And I'm glad that that we were able to get you and that you did the 2009, because actually I think that saved a lot of work, a lot of time and a lot of money. And I want to record are saying that, so I appreciate it.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So good night, everybody.
Good night.
night.
Good night and thank you.
Thanks.
Our next discussion is about 30 Water Street development, a parking proposal that the developer has put forth to us, and Jim Lenling is on the Zoom and can answer questions specific to this. But basically, this is pretty simple. The site plan for 30 Water Street includes a parking garage that's 4 stories. The 4th story of the parking garage was identified as public municipal parking. It's 45 spaces. That was conceived long before we even decided to go to apply for the DRI. When we got the DRI, we do know that, we got the multimodal transportation hub. So right now we have a little over $3 million invested, or in grant money rather. So 3.243 million out of a $12 million estimated $12 million estimated budget. So that does leave us with considerable debt service. We would have to bond for the remainder of that. This opportunity would be a payment in lieu of parking at 30 Water Street. So it would be $25,000 per space, which would be the builder's cost of each space, which would come to a total of $1.225 million. And that could be put towards the the multimodal hub on Brander Street. And that would bring us down to $7.5 million that we would then owe on that, which would probably be bonded and these are important considerations, because while parking is a need, we also now are looking at if we now want to pursue a firehouse, which we think is a very worthy and needed endeavor too, keeping our bond lower and our debt service lower is going to be a consideration. So this would be an opportunity. However, there are pros and cons to this. As we know, it would mean that there would not be a 4th floor municipal parking at 30 Water Street, and the money would go into paying for the multimodal site that we will be going out to bid for engineering design next week. So does the board have any questions?
I have one.
Yes.
The price per space, is that today's price or is that when it's going to be built?
Jim, I will let you answer that.
Yeah, that's our current estimate. So that is the price that we're putting forward with our lenders now, and that's in our construction budget. And first of all, good evening, everybody. Karen, can I share my screen? I just want to show the board.
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
He already knows what he's gonna vote, so it doesn't.
Tell me when you guys see this, please.
We see it, Jim.
We can see it on Zoom.
Thank you. So yeah, just to repeat what Karen said, this has really come up as a consideration for 2 reasons. One, we've heard about this multimodal hub and the importance of it and the cost of it. And 2, as we're going through the design of this building and the parking garage, we thought that this is something that we should put forth. Certainly in the LADA and our approvals, we're required to build 45 parking spaces at the site, and we're fine with doing that, ready to do that, but we wanted to present this option too. When we speak about the design, there's really 2 considerations. Can you guys see my cursor?
Yes.
Yeah, so there is a pinch point right here. It's just, the site is constrained, so it's tight proximity to the wall and the Kilbrook. And in this area, there's a deep cut into this hillside. So this is what it would look like. We would keep the 4 levels, but we would reduce this cut and we would pull back this pinch point. So the dotted red line shows the 45 parking spaces, or shows the entire parking garage as currently approved. This shows a reduction. And really, that's the main difference. One, we thought, the cost could help towards the multimodal hub. And 2, we have this constraint. We could certainly build it. We could certainly do this, but we thought it was worth presenting to the board.
Thank you.
And-
Appreciate you being here. Oh, I'm
Yeah, and
sorry.
there's also just, lastly, not to muddy the waters, there is an option where we can build probably up to 15 spaces here and make a payment in lieu of for the balance. We looked at, if I just flipped quickly, we looked at a few different options, which you see on the right side of the page. So not to put too many options to the board, but there's an option to build as approved, remove the 45 spaces and make a payment in lieu of, or do up to a certain amount on site and a payment in lieu of for the balance. So with that, I'll pause and answer any questions.
Great. Does anybody have any questions? Anybody?
So I know that there were colleagues that felt strongly about sticking to the plan as approved. I would just love to hear a little bit more of what is the argument? What is the case to stick as approved?
For me, I don't believe that that's enough parking. It's all affordable. I know it's near a train, but that train only goes to Manhattan and maybe sometimes up north. I think that I don't want to take spots away. I don't believe it's even enough spots, but it's what's allowed. So I don't want to change it. I want to have enough parking for that building. The street has virtually no parking. It's not a community that has street parking where you go, okay, so some guests and whatever can park on the street. I don't think we need the extra for the multimodal. If you actually look at the study about the downtown, it's not going to make a huge difference by saving us a few dollars. I do think that I want it to stay the way it is. We've already given up the ramp and the elevator that was supposed to be there from, it's like chipping away. So for me, that area, which I think this board should be interested in developing more small businesses, more restaurants, et cetera, people who live there, I would like to see parking down there because there really just is so little to begin with. And so for me to change from as is would have to be like, show me that it's such a huge difference for the community, not just a financial. So that's where I sort of come. I want to develop that area and I want businesses to thrive and I want that to be a location that people actually go and stay in. And for that, you would have to, especially in the winter, you're going to need the parking. So that's where I sort of land on that to answer your question. Oh, I think we could take that off. Who's ever, guys, that Jamie doing that? Because I'm sorry, if you could remove that, just because I'd like to see the folks. Dana, do you have, was that your only question?
That's my first
Did
question.
you
If others,
have-
yeah,
no,
but yeah,
please,
no, if
please
others wanted
continue.
to expand, that
Anybody else
perspective
have
makes sense.
anything?
Actually,
Thoughts?
and I have the same sentiment that the mayor has, but I would love to hear why are we here? Because there was obviously a majority of trustees that wanted to be here having this conversation. So, and a preference for me, I would love to hear what is your thoughts on this?
Sure. So I wanted to hear more. The email was, hey, they have this proposal. Is this something you would entertain? My response was, yeah, I'll entertain it. And so I'm trying to hear all the arguments. And there were folks that felt strongly from that email, no, let's leave it as it is. And so I didn't come in with a strong perspective. I came in with an open mind. And so I was looking to hear from folks that did have a strong perspective. So the mayor's answer was quite helpful to that. And I will say that for me, so far of the information that I've gathered, what I'm hearing is that there's space argument that they are making because I don't know if it's kind of aesthetic or functional or whatever, but cost that it will cost less. Okay, so but that wasn't the argument that he was making.
He was referring that, that they need to, they found rock, they need to do a little bit more digging, they need to do more that work itself.
Yeah.
For that, so it becomes a cost.
Got it. Okay.
Savings.
I don't know. I mean, I didn't hear it that way. That
No.
what
Yeah,
he said was there's a
interpretation.
pinch area,
Right.
and they'll do it, but it would be preferred. I didn't hear it as a costing because it's in their plan and they're going to have to, and that'll be their cost and that's the way it is.
But if I can expand,
just to answer your question though, so it becomes a little bit, so just to put more perspective to this, sure. One of the biggest things that, forget about this project in general, sure. And we've been talking about this since 4 years, 5 years ago, the high water table that is happening throughout just the Hudson area itself. And we have spent a lot of money and a lot of time and resources in trying to look what happens to this. And even when we went to the update to the comp plan, that was one of the biggest things that we were talking about. So talking about water level, the water table itself, one of the things that we were looking into is more like sort of reducing some parking spaces in some areas within our limits. If we were to do that at some point, and I'm not saying we're going to do this tomorrow, but if that happens, then we wanted to bring more green space, we wanted to make more functional spaces and within a train station area. So I'm looking at not just right now, but I'm looking at hopefully in the next 5 to 10 years, and how do we develop those areas into a more functional spaces, public spaces, just like, the mayor said, more businesses, and how to the walkability of those areas, not just from the center of our village and other parts of our village, but also try to connect all those things. So because of that, we are going to be needing parking spaces. So I will hate to take away the ability for us to have that an opportunity that we have now, because that's what we agree based on some of the stuff that my recollection was, some of the stuff that we were trying to figure out, how do we bring more community parking into that area. So that's just to piggyback to what the mayor said.
So just to expand on the pinch point that Jim's referring to, we went through a whole scenario with the fire apparatus. And I'm heading in the right direction, right, Jim?
Yeah, no, certainly. Yep.
This definitely helps because the positioning of the bridge that goes across, we're going to put it in an angle, we're going to do this, and we came to a happy place. This kind of helps a little more with the apparatus placement because the ladder couldn't ladder the building correctly. I believe you guys were down there when we did this with the cones. So I think that's what the pinch point is. I don't believe it's about money. I believe it's that pinch point would be relieved for the safety of the residents. So just
that's helpful.
Just to expand on that.
That's
That's when he
helpful.
says pinch point.
Dana, any comment? Oh, I'm sorry. Again. Are you-
Yeah. Dana, do you have any
Dana,
comments?
Questions or comments?
I mean, I don't feel strongly one way or the other. It looks like we're saying we can have less debt if we apply that money to the multimodal parking. We have less debt on that if we get rid of these parking spaces down here. I too would like to see parking for the neighborhood. I know it's a challenge down there. So I don't necessarily want to deprive the people who live there or who are going to be visiting down there of a place to park. So.
And so,
So
Yeah,
it's
I
a
think
yes
the
or
one,
no right now.
the one thing that I would add is that when we first discussed
mhm.
this whole project, it was pre-pandemic. And so the parking spaces that are right across the street were all in very heavy use for commuters. That has since changed, and we've changed some of the signage and kind of rules with that as a result. And so that may also change over time, who knows, but that to me also changes part of the calculus in terms of the availability of spots, which that is now more available than it was a few years ago.
I'm hoping for the community space and for business development. And so I am hopeful when we do the streetscaping that in fact we are going to need that parking. I think that the parking is needed there more than it actually is needed for the multimodal and the difference in
your weekends in your small studio.
that's what I was going to say next. And that, so it doesn't, there's no net gain of parking. There's net loss. That's exactly where I'm going. There is a net gain of some financials given these, but I don't want to sacrifice that. And by the way, Jim, I appreciate the creative thinking going on. I think that you guys are sitting there going, we can help with another project and also, you know, supplement an issue that we have or fix an issue. I get that. I really would like that downtown waterfront area to develop. And I think parking is a big part of it. And there'll be competition amongst the residents, the businesses, because I am predicting that the building that you're building, the 109, will be very successful. I am predicting that the businesses will do well down there. I am predicting that it will be a destination. Therefore, I want to be prepared for it. We can't build this after the fact. That's, that's, I'm predicting and hoping for success because I think it will be successful. That's why I want to keep it the way it is. So anyway, that's my opinion. Do we need a vote? What do we do?
Yeah, we need a majority. And what do
Okay,
you want?
so I would like to stay as is, given my reasons. If I could just get people to tell me where they are and then we can go on.
I agree.
You agree that it should
Don't
stay the
make-
same?
No matter, I don't want to make any changes. I think we should just move forward with the project. The sign that, if that's the reason why, as Bob stated, is for fire apparatus access, there's different ways to approach that problem, sure. It's not the first project that has a difficulty having access to a fire department process. So, it's in engineers, they'll figure it out. They always do.
I'm okay with
Where are you with this, Bob? I don't think I asked you because I think
I'm
the
still on,
fourth-
I'm on the fence. I don't know where.
you're on the fence. Okay, Dana? Well, wait till the fence. Well, we need a majority. Dana, which way you
Let
go?
us
I'm
know.
on the fence, but I'm leaning toward keeping things as is.
Okay, and Omar, where are you?
Yeah, I'm with Dana.
Okay.
Because if the,
No.
no, well, if the, I think,
Listening to all the
yeah,
arguments.
the main takeaway that I have is that the net benefit is financial, because we get $1 million towards the multimodal.
Right.
And the main drawback is the loss of parking at that waterfront area. And given that trade-off, since we're not in a financial pinch with multimodal at this point, it feels like that's less of a win than a lot of the arguments that you were making for keeping the parking. Those to me, although based on, we're hoping that given development or whatever, I like the direction. To me, it makes sense. It's sound logic. And so if you're looking for a third, you found a third.
Well, also with Dana, that would make the fourth. Where are you?
Well, you have your majority, but I'm gonna say that I would have taken the financial.
Okay. All right. So is everybody okay? We're good? Yes, I'm doing like 1, 2, 3 count. Okay. So I think well, thank you, Jim. We appreciate the creative thinking. I'm sure there will be other opportunities where you'll come to us and say, we'd like to change this, maybe do that. We might be able to help you with this other thing. So I don't want you guys not to keep thinking, but in this particular scenario, we'd like to stay on course as originally discussed.
Understood. Clear direction. So thank you very much.
We
Thanks,
appreciate
Jim.
your time.
Thank you, Jim. Our next item for discussion has to do with grant funding for our water treatment plant. And as you all know, we have been working on grants for the water treatment plant because this is indeed a project that's estimated to cost us more than we had originally thought when we started planning many years ago. So we recently found out, so we're applying for an intermunicipal grant we can be awarded up to $30 million. We have worked very, very hard lobbying the EFC to consider our partnership with the town for the distribution of water as an intermunicipal arrangement, and that our current funding of the water treatment of the way we currently partner with the town does have and has a financial commitment to the new water treatment plant, which is a critical component for eligibility, because they cannot do that through their budget wouldn't allow. Their budget's too small. They don't have a water fund that's not subject to the tax cap. And for a variety of reasons, they have to pay incrementally. So we have worked with bond counsel, our bond counsel, the town's same as the town's bond counsel, who's been talking to the EFC. We believe that we just finished an updated draft of the IMA, which we'll be sharing with the town. And we think that really tees us up in a very strong way to have a good shot at the $30 million. There's always a catch, though. So the catch is we would have to rescind the $3 million WIA grant. That's the water infrastructure improvement grant that we got in 2019. The intermunicipal grant and the WIA grant are the same funding stream through the EFC. We will also be applying, because it's the same application, the IMG application and the WIA application is the same application. The WIA grant that was $3 million is now $5 million. So we will be applying for the $30 million IMG plan. If the board decides they want to rescind the WIA grant, because that is contingent, we have to do that to apply. A $5 million WIA grant, and separately, we'll be submitting tomorrow a $10 million grant to Empire State Development, completely separate grant, completely separate agency, also for the water treatment plant. So it's a total of 45 million that we're applying to apply for 35 of it. We need to give up the $3 million that we have right now with no guarantees that we get the 35. However, we have been working on this. We have Assemblyperson Steve Otis, Dana Levenberg, and Senator Pete Harcum, who have been talking to the EFC on a regular basis over the last several weeks on our behalf. The EFC is favorable to the project. They understand that the WIA money really doesn't make an impact on a project that's estimated at $70 million. Our bond counsel worked very closely with EFC's legal counsel to identify what the language is or what the terms are that they would need to see in the IMA. And I think that collectively, with large help from Stuart and Dale, we've been able to create an IMA that will meet those qualifications. All of the people that we're talking about feel that given the magnitude of potential reward, it makes sense for the village to apply for the funding and rescind the money, even though we're taking a bit of a risk. And Dale is also here, who can talk about what the implications of no grant funding versus the different grant funding scenarios. So Dale, I think that's probably the most important question. What would be the impact to debt service and the water fund if we have no grant funding whatsoever?
Thank you, Village Manager Totori. In terms of the $3 million grant that we currently are talking about rescinding, if we rescind that amount, we are basically adding another $186,000 a year in debt service for the project. But the offset for that, if we're looking at risk to reward, is for the $5 million WIA grant. Same grant, they just increased the maximum level. We would be saving $310,000 a year in our debt service payments. And for the $30 million IMG grant, if we were ever so lucky to get that grant, we'd actually be saving $1,860,000 a year in debt service. In speaking with the EFC at one point, they did want to know in terms of our water rates, what the impact of that $30 million grant would have on our residents. And it's basically a 15% rate increase to reach that 30 million for debt service payments every year. But definitely a big thank you to Douglas Goodfriend from ORC. He really helped us out and has been a bridge with the EFC as well. So definitely a big thank you.
All right. Does anybody have any questions? I think we've seen some of the emails in layman's term, giving up 3 million for potential 30, possibly 35 million. It's a risk. I spoke to somebody in Liverburg and to Senator Harkin. It feels like it's better than a 50% shot at this. It's never a sure thing. I'm okay with it because I just think we have to go for it. It's really uncomfortable. It's a bureaucratic nightmare that you would have to give up a grant that you already have for a project involving water, which everybody should be doing, what we're doing. But I won't go through the hoops and hurdles and craziness of, how sometimes, even though we are part of government, that I could say, that you'd have to give up one to get another is really sort of silly. That being what it is, we just have to make a decision whether we would give up a sure 3 million for a possible 35 million. And there will be other grants as well. So I'm supportive of that. What does everybody else think? I mean, I read the emails. It feels like the board is supportive, but people after this information or just driving here tonight may have changed their minds. So if I could just do a round around the room.
Start
I'm
over
okay
here.
with that.
I'm a
Thumbs
yes.
up over here,
Yeah,
thumbs up.
I say we roll the dice.
Okay, and Dana, your thumbs up?
Yes.
Great. And so we thank everybody in the village, especially the village manager, for putting tons of work into this. It's a lot of work. I don't think people appreciate how much heavy lifting is done, how many phone calls have to get done. A lot of pressure. Every municipality goes after their senators and their assembly people, asking for important things, but I think the staff's done like an amazing job and, fingers crossed for those of you that pray, put an extra word in for the village manager to get what she wants and, we'll see where it goes. So I appreciate everybody. You get a unanimous thumbs up and we'll move forward. Now
Thank
comes
you.
the next one, right?
Thank you, Mayor. So next week, we will have a resolution allowing me to issue a letter rescinding the grant to the EFC before we actually submit the grant.
Right.
I do want to just clarify the problem is the WIA grant, or the issue is the WIA grant and the IMG grant are mutually exclusive. So the options we have now is the EFC, we have an opportunity to be awarded $30 million, and that is what we've been pushing for. But because we lost the WIA that we got last time, we're reapplying. So there is the opportunity, if for some reason the EFC just can't qualify us, we can still get the 5 million. And then again, separately, we're applying for an ESD grant. And this money is money that's come from the infrastructure bill from the federal government. So it's never been given out before. But this is $10 million for infrastructure projects that are supportive of housing development. So we really fit the box for that. But again, we have no idea. This is the first time that grant's been awarded. It's $75 million in the pool. We don't know how competitive the pool is. So, but I just wanted to clarify, and I do want to thank very much our assembly people, Steve Otis, Dana Levenberg, our senator, Pete Harcum, have been amazingly responsive to this. I've had multiple conversations with each of them. They've proactively reached out to me. They're really, really lobbying hard for this. They've made numerous calls to the decision makers at EFC and really understand how important this project is. But I just want to say it's a really good example of government advocacy in action. So we're happy about that, and we have our fingers and toes crossed.
Thank you.
And that is the last item for tonight. And I think we're now adjourning
Tonight's,
for this
Need a
special
motion to
meeting.
work
adjourn the
session.
special meeting.
Yes. Motion,
So moved.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so we adjourned at 9:36, it looks like. From that meeting, now we're going into a board trustee special meeting, correct?
Yes, we are. And let me take the roll.
Okay.
Trustee White,
Present.
trustee Fritchie,
Present.
trustee Kazada,
Present.
deputy mayor Lopez.
Present.
And Mayor Levin.
Present.
Okay. Is there any public comment on this evening's agenda items? Jamie?
Is there anyone in the audience there?
Nope.
Okay.
Looks like there are 8 participants, but I assume it's all you
There's,
guys.
there's not 8 participants. There's 3 attendees, including the 5 panelists. So there are 3 people in the audience. If you would like to raise your hand, I'll bring you over to speak. Going once?
Jamie, you also have a Q&A with. the
I
number-
know. We'll talk about that after.
Okay, no, there are no Q&As of this, but I
Yeah, I
just,
know.
okay.
You know, yeah. There is nobody that has their hands up right now. Aaron.
Thank you, Jamie. Mayor, I'm going to defer on the first resolution to do that as to the last resolution.
Oh,
So we can deal with the bond and the other one, then we'll
Okay.
get back to that. So resolution B, a resolution authorizing subject to permissive referendum, the issuance of an additional $15,241,528 in bonds of the Village of Ossining, Westchester County, New York, to pay part of the cost of construction of the Indian Brook Water Treatment Plant project in and for said village. Excuse me. Need the one where I checked off the boxes. Yeah. Whereas all conditions precedent to the financing of the capital project hereinafter described, including compliance with the provisions of the State Environmental Quality Review Act, have been performed. And whereas the Board of Trustees of the Village of Ossining, Westchester County, New York, the Village, on September 14th, 2021, duly adopted a bond resolution authorizing the issuance up to $63,160,000 bonds of said village to pay the cost of the construction of the Indian Brook Water Treatment Plant project in and for said Village of Ossining, Westchester County, New York. And whereas it has been determined that the maximum estimated cost of such project or purpose is $78,401,528, an increase of $15,241,528 over that previously authorized. And whereas it is now desired to authorize the issuance of an additional $15,241,528 of bonds of said village for such specific object or purpose to pay a portion of the cost thereof. Now therefore be it resolved by the affirmative vote of not less than 2/3 of the total voting strength of the Board of Trustees of the Village of Ossining, Westchester County, New York, as follows. Section 1. For the object or purpose of paying additional costs of construction of the Indian Brook Water Treatment Plant project, including improvements and costs incidental thereto, there are hereby authorized to be issued an additional $15,241,528 bonds of the Village of Ossining, Westchester County, New York, pursuant to the provisions of the local finance law. Section 2, it is hereby determined that the maximum estimated cost of such specific object or purpose is now determined to be $78,401,528, which specific object or purpose is hereby authorized at said maximum estimated cost, and that the plan for financing thereof is as follows. A, by the issuance of the $63,160,000 bonds of said village authorized to be issued pursuant to bond resolution dated and duly adopted September 14, 2021. And B, by the issuance of the additional $15,241,528 bonds of said village authorized to be issued pursuant to this bond resolution, provided, however, that in the amount of bonds to be issued shall be reduced to the extent of grants received in connection therewith. Section 7, the village treasurer is hereby further authorized at her sole discretion to execute a project finance agreement and any other agreements with the New York State Department of Health and or the New York State Environmental Facilities Corporation, including amendments thereto, and including any instruments or amendments thereto in the effectuation thereof, and in order to effectuate the financing or refinancing of the class of objects or purposes described in Section 1 hereof, and of the bond resolution dated September 14, 2021, or a portion thereof by a bond and or note issue of said village in the event of the sale of same to the New York State Environmental Facilities Corporation. Section 10, upon this resolution taking effect, a summary thereof shall be published in the official newspaper, together with a notice of the village clerk in substantially the form provided in Section 81.00 of the local finance law. Section 11, this resolution is adopted subject to permissive referendum, and this will be a voice vote. And a roll call vote. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Any comments or questions?
Okay, taking the roll, please. Trustee White,
Aye.
trustee Fritchie,
Aye.
trustee Kazada,
Aye.
deputy mayor Lopez,
Aye.
and Mayor Levin.
Aye.
Thank you. Resolution approval of stipulation of settlement. Resolved that the Board of Trustees approves the stipulation of settlement with Village of Ossining employee 0896, last four digits of social security number, and be it further resolved that the mayor is authorized to sign the aforementioned stipulation of settlement on behalf of the village. Do I have a motion?
So move.
Second.
Any questions or comments? Stuart?
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you. Returning back to A. Village of Ossining Board of Trustees expression of support for a payment in lieu of taxes pilot agreement, including sales tax exemptions between the Westchester County Industrial Development Agency and 136-140 Croton Avenue LLC, care of McQuestion Development LLC for the property located at 136-140 Croton Avenue. Whereas McQuestion Development LLC received site plan approval from the Village of Ossining Planning Board for the construction of a 3.5-story, 99,140 square foot building containing multifamily residential, flex community, and retail space on a 0.8 acre parcel located on the south side of Croton Avenue. And whereas the site includes two tax parcels with frontages on Croton Avenue, Prospect Avenue, and Watson Avenue, and is in the Neighborhood Center NC zoning district, as well as the Croton Avenue Overlay District, and is identified on the tax map as section 89.16, block 7, lots 79 and 80. And whereas the lower levels of the building would contain approximately 1,836 square feet of flex neighborhood community space, 1,694 square feet of retail space, with 73 affordable units, affordable senior age 62 plus housing above. And whereas the affordable senior housing would include 33 studios and 40 one-bedroom units and 1 two-bedroom unit for the on-site superintendent. And whereas the site would include 2 levels of covered parking for building residents and customers of the flex community and retail spaces, totaling 79 parking spaces. And whereas in addition to approvals from the Planning Board, Board of Architectural Review, McQuestion Development LLC was granted 4 area variances by the Village of Ossining Zoning Board of Appeals. And whereas McQuestion Development LLC, the Board of Trustees and village staff have been discussing a payment in lieu of taxes agreement between Westchester County Industrial Development Agency and 136-140 Croton Avenue LLC, care of McQuestion Development LLC, including sales and use tax exemptions. And whereas the pilot and the Village and McQuestion Development LLC have agreed on a proposed pilot schedule annexed to this resolution as Exhibit A. And whereas McQuestion Development LLC also has agreed to the installation of 6 decorative streetlights, 1 to 2 bicycle racks, and 1 to 2 benches at the site. Now therefore be it resolved that the Village of Ossining Board of Trustees supports the efforts of and will fully cooperate with 136-140 Croton Avenue LLC, care of McQuestion Development LLC, to obtain financial assistance for the above described project from the Westchester County Industrial Development Agency for an abatement of real property taxes pursuant to a pilot agreement in accord with the schedule annexed to this resolution as Exhibit A and sales and use tax exemptions. Do I have a motion?
So move.
Second.
I have a question / comment. This is something I haven't seen, or maybe I haven't been paying attention. Last paragraph, the efforts of that the Village of Ossining Board of Trustees supports the efforts of and will fully cooperate with 136-140 Croton Avenue, blah, blah, blah. What does that actually mean, the efforts? I haven't seen that verbiage.
That's what we've used in all the other pilot.
You know,
agreements.
so this is related to the pilot.
Yes.
In what scenario would we not cooperate, or what, I mean, like, why is that pointed out? I don't know what fully cooperate means. We're not,
because that's the language that not just for this village, but in other ones, that is the standard language that is used. And it's needed to basically show that the municipality approves and will assist the applicant in any way towards getting the pilot agreement from the IDA pursuant to the terms that we have agreed to.
Go into the terms. So, okay, I'm trying to figure out why it's even necessary there. Like in one scenario, would we not cooperate? But okay. So we're in the middle of a vote.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
No,
Oh, sorry. There is one no. And Dana, I didn't hear you.
I,
Okay.
She did, she can vote. She just can't count as a quorum. Yes. Okay, so that's recorded as 4 ayes, 1 nay. Thank you. And I do not believe there is an executive session, so do I have a motion?
I think that there is.
Oh, there is? Okay.
Matters of personnel.
Okay, that's fine. So we have a motion
Oh, you
to
took- oh, sorry,
adjourn
go
the
ahead.
work session for matters of personnel.
So moved.
second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry, it is 9:50. And it's okay. 9:50 and we are adjourned for the evening. And I hope that you will join us tomorrow for a Transformational Thursday. And we will also have posted in the mayor's message and elsewhere tours. The first tour took place today. I started with village manager, then we were joined by deputy mayor to do a tour of all the DRIs. We're going to do more of those as well as, so please join us, as well as be in Market Square. Please join us for that. We love getting the input from our community as well as getting our steps in for the day. So please join us when you can. Well, tomorrow is the Transformational Thursday webinar. It's the last and exciting one to wrap up the 8 of them. But after that, we have more in the way of communication. So thank you and good night.